Palestinians have now endured 100 days of war, already the worst in Gaza's history. In the latest Israeli airstrikes, 30 people, including several children, were killed in a residential building in Gaza City. Another attack in Rafah killed 14. The war began with Hamas's attacks in southern Israel on October the 7th, when around 1,200 people were killed. More than 500 Israeli soldiers have been killed, most of them in the initial Hamas attacks. At least 23,843 Palestinians have been killed, and more than 10,400 of them have been children. Gaza's health ministry says nearly 340 health workers are amongst the dead and at least 117 journalists. Well, despite growing international outrage, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that no one will stop his country from continuing the war. Let's get the latest now from Hani Mahmoud. He joins us from Rafah in southern Gaza. So, Hani, 100 days of near constant shelling, shortages of food, medicine, shelter. It's beyond imaginable for most of us. How are people coping?
Yes, well, it's not a question about how people are coping. It's a question about whether people have other options or not. And so far, Palestinians in Gaza Strip, particularly this small part of the Gaza Strip in the southern part, have no other choice but to accept what's going on, and which there is a problem with that. People do not want to get to the point where they acquiesce with their suffering and misery. They want an end to this, but the conditions on the ground are created to further the misery and the suffering and to push them into accepting it, and there is no other choice to it. So far, we're not looking at death and destruction, just the sheer level of destruction to cities and towns and public facilities, to the point making the entire Gaza Strip, particularly the northern part in Gaza, uninhabitable, and it created the conditions of making it unbearable, unlivable. But we're looking at completely dire humanitarian situations with acute shortage of food, water, and medical supplies, and conditions created on the ground, making the humanitarian aid process broken, as a progressive American senator described it, as a broken aid process in the Gaza Strip when he was commenting in front of Congress. But there is also a growing concern and an overwhelming fear right now among 1.5 displaced Palestinians in the southern part here in Rafah city. There are reports about Israeli plans of taking over the borderline between Egypt and Gaza, better known the Philadelphia corridor. If that happens, it will force the 1.5 million people into further displacement. And the fact that this area is overcrowded, a single missile could kill hundreds of people. We're talking about a very overcrowded, fully packed area, very close to the borders. From where I'm standing right here, we're talking about at least half kilometer away from the borderline, the very borderline the Israeli military is talking about and has set up plans to take over it. The situations are not becoming easier. In fact, they're becoming more difficult and just get worse in each passing day.
And Hani, the strikes continue, the Israeli bombing of the Gaza Strip. Tell us about the latest places that have been hit.
Yes, well, so far we're looking at an ongoing aerial bombardment along with artillery shelling of the eastern border of Rafah, Khan Yunis, and the central area. There are also overnight attacks on the city of Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun, what seems to be the Israeli military continuing its process of raising more agricultural land and destroying remaining residential buildings in the area, again consistent with the plan of establishing a buffer zone and making the part in the north of Gaza uninhabitable completely. But in the central part of Gaza, we're looking at the city of Deir al-Balah, within the vicinity of Al-Aqsa Hospital, the only remaining health facility in the area, and an area was described and designated as safe for Palestinians to evacuate to. As of these days, becoming increasingly dangerous and risky. And with the total communication and phone service blackout, it's very difficult to get exactly the exact figures of the casualties in the central area and Deir al-Balah city and in Khan Yunis. But so far, we're expecting a high number within the coming hours, as there were massive aerial bombardment on particularly Al-Burayj refugee camp, Al-Maghazi, as well as eastern of Deir al-Balah city and within the vicinity of Al-Aqsa Hospital. Here in Rafah city, very close to the vicinity of this hospital, Yibna neighborhood, Yibna, a refugee camp, a small refugee camp in southern Rafah city, where 6 people were reported injured. No death was reported as a result of a drone attack on a residential homes in the southern part of Rafah city. The bombings continues, the pounding continues. There are more people are killed, more people under the rubbles, and further humanitarian conditions made difficult on the ground for people right now.
Okay, Hani Mahmoud reporting there from Rafah in southern Gaza. Thanks very much, Hani.